Dr. Rabin Bhattarai, University of Illinois.
So as you know, Illinois is big in agriculture. That's our bread and butter for this state is. And probably we have heard about hypoxia in Gulf of Mexico, which every summer we have this big hypoxic or dead zone where we do not have any aquatic system at all actually, no fishes, no shrimps. And basically where that is happening is then all your state and or region in the upper Mississippi River Basin where we are doing a lot of farming, and some nutrient that are not being utilized by our crops actually ends up in our stream system and goes to the Gulf and then creates this hypoxic or dead zone in the Gulf there. So then my first project is basically about how we can design our tile system, our spacing and depth in such a way that not only we reduce our water quality impact from our field, but also we can get a good crop production. This is the third year of our project. So we have installed this 6 replicated plots which have like 3 different spacing and depth of tiles. Each field is around like 5 acres in area, and we have been looking at, let's say, one combination is like 2 fields of 5 acres have 40 feet tile spacing and 3.5 feet depth. The second set of our field have 60 feet tile spacing with 2.5 feet depth, and the third set of field have actually 80 feet tile spacing with 3.5 feet depth. Okay. The reason we have these 3 combinations is actually, as you can see from the numbers, so the 2 fields, your 60 and 2.5 and 80 and 3.5 actually have the same thing called actually the same drainage coefficient. So we are looking at actually how different this combination actually impacts the water quality as well as the crop yield, and we have been monitoring the crop yield from these plots as well. And so what we have figured out so far actually is then some of the interesting findings. One is drainage coefficient. The way you design the tile system, your drainage coefficient does impact your water and the nutrient loss. So what we have found out is this field where the higher drainage coefficient, your 40 feet and 3.5 feet depth field actually has higher water and nutrient loss compared to the other 2 fields. And then based on our measurement, it has been shown that actually what we have noted that is your water and the nutrient loss during your non-cropping season, that means the dormant season where you do not have any crop growing in the field, was actually higher than the water and nutrient loss during your cropping season. So what does that mean actually is then it's not about how we manage our field during the cropping season, but maybe it's time to also look at actually how do we manage our field during the non-cropping season. That means nothing is going on the field, how we can actually also reduce our water and nutrient loss during that time. And then other things we have found out also in terms of your crop yield from the different this plot is there is some differences in the crop responses due to different spacing and depth, but it's not, I mean, consistent. We haven't seen a trend saying, okay, if you have a higher spacing or deeper depth, that gives you better yield, at least not from our what we have seen from our preliminary data so far. So on my other project, where we are looking at actually is how does, let's say, we can manage the water and nutrient in the field. So what we have done so far is that we're looking at actually how this practice works, not only in the field scale, but also in the bigger scale, watershed scale. So that means, let's say if you put a control structure in your drainage tile and the hold of the water, where does that water go? Does it water go to your neighbor's field and somehow goes to your drainage ditch ultimately? And how does that quality of that water would be? Would that be clear than it would have been if you just let that flow through your own tile system? So in that project, what we have established actually is then 2 watersheds, almost around like 200 acres each. And for one watershed, what we have done is we have installed the tiles and control structures. And for this watershed that we call it treatment watershed, we actually going to manage the water. So that means we're going to shut down the tile lines after harvest in the winter, and then we're going to open it a few weeks before you harvest in the in your springtime before planting, and then slowly manage also during the actually cropping season. And then for the other watershed, what we call it the control watershed, for this one what we do is then we monitor the water and the quality, that means basically nitrate and the phosphorus if you can get a chance. And then for this watershed that we're not going to manage actually anything, we just let it flow freely. That means we just monitor the water quantity and quality using our techniques of monitoring the water flow and the nutrient from those fields and the watershed. But then, so we want to compare actually how does these two watershed responds to same rainfall or same cropping system over the different years. And we want to see actually is that what will happen, let's say if you want to expand this practice to larger area, let's say if you want to do that for whole Illinois River Basin or for whole upper Mississippi, by managing the drainage over the winter time and also during your cropping season, how much nutrient loss we can reduce and how much water quality benefit we can get from this project. So the message is to actually again expand it, broaden the findings into not only journal publication or some report, but also actually how these practices can also help actually to reduce our water quality impact from our field, our state, and also sustain our agricultural production. So that's your managing that we call, those kind of practice that we call actually is in-farm practices. So that means managing your farm management. But my practice that I'm looking at actually is called, these are called edge of the field practice, okay? Like the things like bioreactors, which have been investigated by one of my colleagues here in crop science, Laura, she's Dr. Christiansen. So she's looking at actually how we can also use, let's say, bioreactors at the edge of the field, where what we do is then rather than letting this water go through your tile system straight to the ditch and to the rivers, how about we treat them on the way, okay? But in my practice, what I'm looking at actually is that a little different from, let's say, cover crop or bioreactor is other practice that has not been investigated much in Illinois, even though we have some data from other states like Indiana and Iowa saying that it works. We don't know exactly how effective that practice would be in our context here in Illinois, and also not looking at only on the farm scale, but also going in the bigger scale in like watershed scale in that sense.